Hello, thank you for joining me today. I'm Rob Day and I'm a product specialist with the RSpace Electronic Lab Notebook solution. Today I'll perform a simple run through of the product that should help viewers to familiarize themselves with the key elements of the user interface. If you have any questions about what you see today, you're welcome to send me an email, or you can also contact me via Skype. If you'd like to try the system for yourself, you certainly can. Simply make a note of this URL and enter it into the address bar of any HTML5 equipped browser on any workstation or on any mobile device. For workstations, we recommend Safari for the Mac or Firefox for Windows. We don't recommend Microsoft Internet Explorer. Let's go ahead and get started. Simply enter the URL of the server you'd like to access in the address bar, and then go ahead and enter your username and password. If you don't have a username and password, you can click the sign up link, and that will allow you to create your own username and password here. Assuming you already have login credentials, enter them at the login window, and then click login. Once you've logged into the system, the first thing you'll see is the workspace. The workspace is analogous to the desktop of your own computer. It shows you the things that you're most likely to be currently working with. I can select any of these items to reveal a contextual menu of actions that I can perform on these items. I can delete the item, copy it, move it, rename it, export it as a PDF, export it as a zip archive, study the revisions of this document, send it out to an external repository if one is connected, or I can share the item with my colleagues. Let's go ahead and move this item to a new location in my file hierarchy. Perhaps I'd like to insert it into the demo materials folder. I click the move button and the item is now moved to that subfolder. If I'd like to see a more detailed view of my file hierarchy, I can click on the tree button and that will reveal the entire file hierarchy so that I can explore it in some more detail. I can tunnel down through different folders, and I can access documents directly from here if I like. I can also browse through the content of any notebooks that I may already have created. I like to stay in the list view most of the time though, because that shows me important information about when the item was last modified, and I can also sort items here by name or by the modified date. To get back to the top of the hierarchy at any time, I can either follow the breadcrumb trail here, or I can simply click on the Workspace tab, which will return me to the top of my file hierarchy. To create a new folder, I simply click Create, then Folder, give the folder a new name, and click OK. The new folder is created and I can see there's nothing in it currently. I can either choose to create something else in this folder, or I can return to the top of the file hierarchy. Currently, we're looking at the workspace. Let's go ahead and look at the gallery. The gallery is analogous to the hard drive on your computer. It's where you can keep commonly used files, images, and data of all kinds that you might want to recycle or reuse in your work. It's really easy to get content into the gallery. You can use either the Finder or your Windows File Explorer to navigate to files that you would like to use, select any number of files, and then simply drag them into the gallery to add them. You'll see the screen flash indicating that the files have been uploaded to the RSpace server, and you'll be able to see them sitting in your gallery. You can select any of these items to reveal a similar contextual action menu to the one we saw in the workspace. This will allow me to perform actions on the items that I've now moved to the gallery. If I prefer, I can import items to the gallery by using a standard file chooser. Or I can import items to the gallery by navigating to a link that represents a known location for that file out on the internet somewhere or on my intranet. You'll notice that the gallery is divided into different areas. Files are sorted by type automatically so that they appear either in the image gallery, the multimedia gallery, the document gallery, the miscellaneous file type gallery containing files with extension names on them that perhaps I've never heard of, We also see here exported PDFs that have come from the workspace. snips that represent content that I might like to reuse in the future, and templates that represent more complex work that I've already created and that I might want to use elsewhere. If I'd like to see a close-up view of some of the images in the image gallery, I can simply click on that image and it will produce a larger preview of the image. I can also see some of the information for that file, including critical information like its creation date and modification date, and if I want, I can add information that is searchable and may allow me to more easily locate the work later on in the future. I can change the order of the files, arranging them by either name or date, and I can reverse the arrangement order. I can add new folders too as well, so that I can organize my work any way I like. Once I've created a new folder, I can select items and I can easily move them to the new folder that I just created. At any time, I can return to the workspace by simply clicking the Workspace tab. One of the nice things about a browser-based system like RSpace is that standard browser commands can be used. For example, I can right-click on the gallery and say Open Link in New Window, which will go ahead and open the gallery in a totally separate window. And this is especially useful if perhaps I'm working with a two-monitor system, so that I can take my gallery and place it on one monitor, but have my workspace available to me on a completely different monitor. And this allows me to see both files that I've already imported and work that I'm currently editing at the same time. Next to the Gallery tab, we have the Messaging tab. You can think of the Messaging tab as being like an internal email system that shows me communications that have come from other users, but also system notifications that may have come from the system itself. The messaging area lets me keep track of things that I need to do, items that I need to witness perhaps, and items that other people have asked to have access to. If I want to send a message while I'm working in the workspace, I can easily do so without having to open up the Messaging tab. I can simply click on this icon here that will allow me to fire up a basic message. I simply enter the username of the person that I'm trying to contact. The system auto-completes because it remembers the names of people that I've contacted in the past. I can add a message and I can say send. I get a notification telling me the message has been sent, and then I'm returned to the workspace. Now that we've looked at the Workspace tab, the Gallery tab and the Messaging tab, let's go ahead and look at the My RSpace tab. The My RSpace area is where you go to perform certain system functions and to configure certain personal preferences. By default, you arrive in the My Profile area. The My Profile area allows you to upload an image of yourself. You can also edit some basic information about yourself that your colleagues will see, like for example your display name, a link that goes to the lab where you work, and maybe a description of your current research. You can also use the My Profile area to change your password and to change your registered email address. And perhaps most important of all, the My RSpace area is where you would go to see a list of people that you work with in your lab. RSpace is specifically designed to arrange individual users into laboratories, just the way that they would be in real academic labs. It's assumed that each lab will have one or more PIs, and that each lab will have a number of standard users besides the PI. If we click on the name of a particular lab group that I belong to, we can see the membership of that lab group. We can see me, and we can see that I'm registered currently as a PI. We can see that we have several other standard users. We can see that I've promoted one of my colleagues to be what's called a lab admin, more about that later, and we can see that perhaps I have a co-PI for this particular lab. If I'd like to get more information about any of the users in my lab, I can simply click on their username, and that will show me some information about that particular individual. I can get more information about labs, individuals, and communities of labs by clicking on the Directory button. The directory immediately shows me a list of all the people who are registered on this server. If I want, I can go ahead and look at the details for any one of these users. I can also go ahead and get some information about particular lab groups, simply by clicking on the name of that lab group. If I'd like to see a complete listing of labs, I can click on Directory and then click on Lab Groups. And this will produce for me a list of all lab groups registered on this server. If I'd like to know how these labs are organized into communities, I can click on the Communities button. Communities typically might be things like academic departments, colleges, sections, buildings, or indeed any logical grouping of labs that makes sense. Each community can have an admin, and the admin for each community can perform certain sorts of housekeeping functions like adding and inactivating users and creating and deleting lab groups. This allows the RSpace main administrator to distribute some of the functionality of administering the server to the sub-administrators of each community, thereby relieving themselves of some of the enormous amount of work that would be necessary for a very large deployment of the product. In the MySpace area, I can also view deleted documents that I've already thrown away, and if I like, I can still change my mind and I can restore these deleted documents back to the workspace. I can also set up my message settings so I can control the verbosity of the system. In other words, I can control what kinds of things the system sends me notifications about. Generally, it's a good idea, I think, to keep all of these checked, and also to ask the system to send you mirrored emails of these notifications directly to your email account. If you don't like receiving emails from RSpace, you can turn these options off. For the My RSpace area, I can also look at my shared records. If I had any shared records, they would appear here, and I would be able to instantly change the permissions or deny access to them for people who are currently sharing those documents. I can also use this area to view the audit trail. And for example, I could say that I would like to see all actions performed by myself. And here we see a complete audit list of everything that I've done recently. From here I can click on the specific resource links so that I can see exactly what it was I was working on and when I was working on that item. I can filter the audit report by date range, by various actions, and of course by username. The last thing I'd like to talk about in the My RSpace area is the Import Archive tool. The Import Archive tool allows you to bring in zip bundles of data that have come from entirely separate RSpace servers. This is an advanced feature, and we'll tackle it more in a separate video where we address issues of importing and exporting data into and out of RSpace, and integrating your data import and export with your institution's archive if they have one. The last tab we'll look at here is the Apps tab. This is where we'll be installing additional plugins and third-party add-ons that will extend the core functionality of the product. Examples include our full-featured sample tracking system that we'll be porting from ECAT, and also additional chemistry tools that will come from our partners at ChemAxon. RSpace is designed to be extensible, and in the future you'll see many new sorts of apps and add-ons in this area. One example of a plugin you can see today is the feedback tab that comes from our friends at UserVoice. This is a great way to send feedback to our developers to help them understand what you'd like to see in future iterations of the product. If you have an immediate support issue though, you'd be better off sending email to support@researchbase.com or to me, rob.day@researchbase.com. Okay, so much for the basic layout of the interface of the product. Now let's go ahead and create some content so that you can see how you would record your work in a real-world situation. Let's start by making a simple standalone document that's not part of a notebook and that doesn't have any complicated structure associated with it. I'm going to go ahead and click on Create and then choose Basic Document. This will open up essentially a blank piece of paper that will let me put whatever I want on it. I can add text, images, embed files, create chemical structures, all sorts of things. We'll start by giving this standalone document a name. Let's call it Algae DNA, and we'll tag it so we can find it more easily in the future. Let's tag it with just DNA, and perhaps a grant number. Maybe this is number 43, let's choose a number I can remember easily, my zip code, 43202. And now we'll go ahead and add that tag. So let's add some content now. I'm going to simply paste in some typing that I did earlier, because trust me, you don't really want to watch me typing. It's a pretty arduous and painful experience. So here's some text. I can choose any of this text and I can bold it, italicize it, underline it, strike it out. I can go ahead and link portions of it to an external resource. So I could select some text and say I'd like to link it to an external URL. I could just as easily link this entire document to something that's already in RSpace. I can use the internal link tool to connect to a somehow related document that I'd like to show my audience. I can also do things like add emoticons to show how I feel about my work. I can add special symbols. In a future version of the product, we actually are embedding a LaTeX editor that will allow us to add additional mathematical formulas and so forth. If I like, I can go ahead and add freehand diagrams. So I could choose to add perhaps a shape that I would like to put in. I can change the dimensions of that shape any way I like. I can pick one of the preloaded images from the drawer. This might be something that I use frequently in my own particular work. I can go ahead and use a freehand sketch to point out something that I'd like to show to my downstream audience a little more clearly. And when I'm happy with the whole thing, I can say insert, and I'll go ahead and insert that image right into my notebook. This works very well on a mobile device, by the way. It supports drawing with a finger, and most of the other things that you see here all work exactly the same on a mobile device as you see here on a workstation. I can also add other types of content too as well. I can put in a chemical structure using the Marvin sketch tool from our friends at Chemaxon. So for example, I could choose to draw an ethane molecule, or I could just as easily choose something from the periodic table here, or I could choose a pre-made organic molecule to add in. Once I'm happy with whatever I've drawn, I can just say save, and it will go ahead and add the chemical structure to my document, and this is now searchable using the chemical structural search tool that we have embedded in RSpace that I'll show you in a moment. We can also put in other things like tables. So I can choose to enter a 2x2 table here, and I can perhaps just put in some basic numbers in here. If I wanted to, I could select the table and I could insert additional rows, or I could insert additional columns to add more information in there. I can also, by the way, copy and paste in tables that have come directly from an Excel file, and they will automatically go in as a table. So I could then edit some of the values in this table and paste them back into the Excel that they just came from. I can use tables in other ways too as well. I could insert a table, and then I could use that as a way to generate a grid of images that I'd like to travel together. So let's put in a new table, and I'll insert in here a couple of images from the gallery. Perhaps I'll choose this one, and then I'll choose another image. I'll choose perhaps this one, and then I can say something about these images in the same table. I can say Chlorella 1 and Chlorella 2, and this will allow me now to copy and paste this entire table if I like from one place to another. So I could select, I could select the entire table, and I could cut it from here, and I could instead paste it up here or anywhere else in RSpace. And this is a nice way to generate a little grid of images with some text associated with them that I'd like to move around from one place to another. If I want to insert Word documents or PDFs or any other kind of file, that's no problem too as well. I can insert those either from the gallery, or I can choose a file from my local file store. So in this case, perhaps I'll choose a protocol in MS Word format, and we'll go ahead and choose this file right here and say choose, and we'll go ahead and add that file here, and you can see the icon for the file, and we can also see that we have the name of the file here. Once I'm happy with the content that I've added to this document, I can go ahead and choose something like save and close. I could also equally easily choose to save and view the item, save it and make a copy of it, or save it and open an entirely new and completely empty document, but I think in this case we'll choose Save and Close for now, and that will return me back to the workspace, where I can now see the document that I've just created, and I'm able to see the time that I created it on too as well. If I'd like to edit that document and add additional content, I can open it back up again, and I can choose where I'd like to add my new content, and I can put in either additional typing. Perhaps I can paste in something else from my clipboard, or I could, if I wanted to, insert some other information, like perhaps an explicit statement of the date and time. Technically these aren't really necessary since everything is time and date stamped in the background on the inbuilt database, but sometimes it's nice to have an explicit statement of those on the page. If I'd like to, I could go ahead and choose Save and Clone, and that will create a copy of this file, which would then allow me to start making some additional content with the new file. Perhaps I could put in a new title here, and I could say this is a copy of an earlier file, and I'll go ahead and give this a new name if I want. I think right now its name it's given by the system is Algae DNA Copy, and on second thoughts I think that name will do just fine for now. Let's imagine that there's some content in here that I would like to use elsewhere too as well. I can go ahead and choose some content, like perhaps this image, or maybe a combination of the image and perhaps the link that points at another resource and some text, and say snip, and I can give this snip some name. I can call it I could say snip a fly image and say OK, and that will save that snippet to the gallery so that I can use it elsewhere. If once again now I choose Save and Close, I can now see that I have two versions of this document, and if I select the first one that I was working with and click on the Revisions button, I can see the various versions that I've created in the past. If I want to, I can go back to one of the earlier versions by clicking on the View button and taking a look at it first of all to see if that's the version that I'm interested in, and if it is, I can in fact go ahead and just once I've found that revision, I can click on the Restore button, and that would restore that version and make it the new current version for that particular document. If I decide that I don't want the copy that I made anymore, I can go ahead and select that, and I can just choose to delete it. If I'd like to turn the document that I just created into a PDF, I can. I do this by simply clicking on the select box for that document and clicking on Export PDF. I can then select or deselect various details that I would like to include in this PDF document. I'm going to uncheck everything for now. I give this file a name, and I say Export. The file is now exported to the PDF area inside the gallery, and I get an alert to tell me that that's the case. If I go to the gallery now and click on the PDF area, I can see the file that I just created. If I double click on that file, it will go ahead and show me that file either in the browser, or it will download to whatever application is set for the default PDF viewing application for my particular system. And you can see that inside that document we have all of the details that I created within RSpace that show up nicely now in a printable form. I can even do something very special. I can, if I like, select this PDF that I just created, and I can go ahead and publish that. And what that will do is that will now make a publicly available link viewable, so that I can copy and paste that link and send it, if I like, to colleagues of mine so that they can access that PDF even if they don't have an RSpace account. So this would generate a publicly accessible PDF. At some point in the future, if I want to, I can unpublish that PDF document, but if I want, I can make it available to people on an as-needed basis, even to my colleagues outside of RSpace. It's a great feature and something that sets RSpace apart from many other ELNs. Once I'm done looking at this PDF, I can, of course, go back to the workspace.